Welcome to Building the Future, hosted by Kevin Horick. With millions of listeners a month, Building the Future has quickly become one of the fastest rising programs, with a focus on interviewing startups, entrepreneurs, investors, CEOs, and more. The radio and TV show airs in 15 markets across the globe, including Silicon Valley. For full showtimes, past episodes, or to sponsor the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com.
Welcome back to the show. Today we have Blair Glencorse. He's the founder and executive director at Accountability Lab. Blair, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Good to be with you.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. I think what you're doing is actually really innovative and cool. But maybe before we get into that, let's get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
Yes, I'm from the UK, as you can probably hear.
Sure,
I grew up over there, and then went to Zimbabwe when I was about 18 for a while, and that's where I really got into the kind of work that I'm doing now. Saw a lot of very different things, and got interested in political change and how economies develop. So came to the US to graduate school. Which is how I ended up in DC, and now I'm working globally on these things.
Okay, so let's step back for a second. What made you go to Zimbabwe?
I think I wanted to, at that age, see what it was like in different parts of the world.
Sure.
We had some connections and friends in that part of Africa. So went over there and was teaching in a school for a year.
Okay.
So so it was fantastic. I mean, a wonderful country. It's a pity what's happened to it since then, but still a great place to visit.
I got you. Very cool. So you went to university. What did you take and why?
In undergrad, I took history because I wanted to understand the present through looking at the past. I suppose I wanted to know how we could learn lessons from the past and use those to help improve the world and the present. And then based on that and my experience in Zimbabwe, went to graduate school to study international relations and economics to again get a better sense of how the world works and think through development specifically and how we might be able to support or precipitate political change in different parts of the world in ways that can make decision making more inclusive and more fair for everyone.
Okay, very cool. So walk me through your career kind of up until Accountability Lab.
Well, once I graduated from graduate school, I went to work for the World Bank in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
And they have a team there that focuses on post-conflict and fragile countries, the countries that tend to be at the bottom of many of the development indicators and have suffered from war or other difficult challenges. So I became very interested in those kinds of situations and worked there on those at the World Bank for several years. During that work, I met the now president of Afghanistan, who's called Ashraf Ghani.
Interesting.
And he was previously the finance minister of Afghanistan, and at that point was setting up a think tank in DC to look at these issues. So I joined him and helped him set that up and worked with him for about 5 years, which was fascinating. Learned a huge amount about all of this stuff and came to the conclusion that accountability is really what it's all about. Unless we can make governments be more accountable to citizens and make sure that people in power are responsible for their decisions, then we're not going to be able to deal with all of the other problems that we face globally. So about 7 years ago, set up the current organization that I run, which is called the Accountability Lab, which is trying to do exactly that. We're trying to find creative ways, particularly with young people, to make governments more accountable, to fight corruption, improve transparency, and support citizen engagement around these kinds of issues. Okay,
but what made you ultimately decide to actually start Accountability Lab?
It happened, the realization that it was needed happened over time, but I remember one incident in particular where I was in Nepal, down in the
Okay.
south of Nepal, and sandwiched between India and China. And down there, it's very hot and dusty. And there were a lot of young people that we were talking to about what they wanted.
Okay.
And it's a very poor part of the world. I was expecting them to say, we want education, we want better schools, we want clean water, all of the sorts of things that they didn't necessarily have. And actually what they said to me was, what we want is people in power to be more accountable. We want justice. We want less corruption, because we know that those are actually the causes of all of these other problems. Until we get those things fixed, we're not going to get education. We're not going to get water. So that's what we want. And it began a process where I talked about this with a lot of people while I was at the World Bank and afterwards, and was in different places. And this was a common theme. It's actually the core of everything else. And unless we can deal with this issue, we can't fix education, we can't fix healthcare or anything else. So that is one piece of it. And then the other is, of course, the youth bit. Of course, demographically, young people represent more than 50% of the global population at this point. They're more dynamic, they're more connected than ever before, and I would argue more willing to challenge the status quo that exists. But they don't always have the support that they need. They often have good ideas, but have very, very few ways to connect those ideas with the relevant funding or the relevant networks to really push them in a way that can make them effective. And so that is the niche that my organization, the Accountability Lab, fills by finding these good young people with amazing ideas and helping them develop them in different ways and to push for the kind of change that they want to see.
Interesting. Okay, so how do you guys actually go about working with these leaders and citizens around the world to actually drive change?
Well, we do a few things, I think, that are a bit different to many organizations. And one is we make this stuff really positive.
Okay.
It is, of course, easy to get really negative about everything going wrong and all of the challenges that we face. And that doesn't fill anyone, particularly young people, with much hope. Right. So we try to flip the narrative. So, for example, corruption, very negative topic. It's all about the problem. It's all about the wrongdoers. And we instead said, okay, let's make it positive. And we started a TV show called Integrity Idol.
Okay, interesting.
So, definitely playing on the idea of American Idol or these mass media popular TV shows that are about people auditioning. But this one is for government officials, and it's for the most honest government officials. And so that's sort of the second piece, I think, that we do that's a bit different. We try and tap into popular culture and into media and tools that young people are interested in and that they use, and then feed the message into that in a way that they find entertaining and engaging. So Integrity Idol has grown now. It's a TV show in 8 countries. Wow. People nominate honest government officials. They vote for their favorites. We've had millions of people watching it, hundreds and hundreds of thousands voting. And it creates a really interesting, positive conversation about the role models and the people that we want to see rather than the bad guys and the corrupt officials, which I think is an important part of changing things.
Sure. So how do you validate that these government officials are actually trying to be honest and have integrity? Because that's got to be really challenging.
It's hard, but we take it really seriously because, of course, if one of them didn't have integrity and we were celebrating them, that would be a big problem. So we now have an 8-step process whereby citizens nominate these people. They have to give references. They have to give a certain amount of information. We have a team that really goes in deep on this. Checks references, goes to see them, visits their offices, visits their families. We do online checks. We coordinate with government agencies to get employment records, all of that kind of stuff, and really get in there and do this deeply. And when we started this, people, particularly in some of the countries that we work, said, "Oh, you're never going to find honest government officials. Corruption is so ubiquitous that this isn't possible." But actually, there are lots and lots of them. And they exist everywhere, and they're doing amazing things and fighting back against really entrenched systems in amazing ways. And so those are the people that we've identified and that we've that we've brought through, and there are some fantastic stories about some of them, and it's really inspirational to see what they're doing, even against all the odds.
No, very cool. So I'm curious, and maybe this is kind of a stupid question. So these government officials get on Integrity Idol. What happens? Like, walk us through the process of the show, and how does it play out, and what do they win? Like, ultimately, they probably want publicity to get elected, but walk us through that whole kind of process and the show, and what's the outcome?
Yeah, so actually, Integrity Idol is just for civil servants,
Okay.
Not elected officials, because
Okay.
we didn't want it to get corrupted in that way, where people who are up for election might try and use it to push their own agenda.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so these are career bureaucrats,
Gotcha.
but are a central part of government systems and make things function and need to be clean and honest. So what we do is ask anyone in the countries in which we work to nominate one of these people if they know one, and we have a 2 or 3 month period where they can do that. They can nominate online. They can do it through paper forms that we hand out at government offices and at tea shops and cafes and all sorts of places. And we get between hundreds and up to sort of 5,000 or 6,000 nominations in some places.
Wow.
And as I said, we then go through a fairly rigorous process of checking these candidates. We get it down to about 30.
Okay.
And then we have a panel of judges who are objective, well known within those countries for their transparency and honesty, who help us get it down to the top 5. And then we film those 5 doing their jobs with their families in their offices, talking about why integrity is important. We get testimonials, all of that kind of thing. And then those episodes go on national television and radio in these countries, and we link it to a voting process by SMS or WhatsApp or online, where people can vote for their favorites. So they watch the videos and vote. And that voting period is about 2 weeks long. Okay. And then we have a big national ceremony where we invite everyone, and we've had prime ministers and heads of state and government ministers and heads of big businesses and everyone in the room, and we celebrate these people publicly with the media there too, of course. And we name and fame them, as we call it, rather than naming and shaming the bad guys. We name and fame these good guys. And that gives them an amazing amount of trust and credibility that they can use to then really push for integrity within their organizations and within their agencies. And they don't get any money, that we're trying to get away from money being the incentive, of course. They just get the glory, the honor of being integrity idols, and a trophy. But we do then work with them quite intensively, individually and as a group, to, as I said, sort of push for integrity within their institutions. And we try and find ways to help them access training and opportunities and ways to continue to create this kind of change.
No, very cool, man. That's really cool. So I'm curious, though, have you thought about bringing some of this to North America? Because I think a lot of people there's probably a ton of people that they would like to nominate in North America, and some people are happy and completely unhappy and everywhere in between with the current government situation in North America and beyond. Have you thought about doing that?
Yes, we would love to do it in the US. And actually, recently there's a newspaper, an online newspaper in Philadelphia called the Philadelphia Citizen, which has a column called The Fix, which is all about sort of government fixes and ways to improve society from around the world. And they heard about Integrity Idol and brought us onto their radio show, which was amazing. Cool. And so that's led to a whole series of conversations about whether we could do Integrity Idol at the subnational level in a particular city, i.e. Philadelphia. So that conversation is underway. So you never know, but very cool. It would be great. It would be great to do it in the US, absolutely, and because these are problems everywhere. I mean, there's corruption in all countries. It's not something that is only part of the lives of people in the developing world.
Sure. So you mentioned something to me that's really interesting. You guys are doing a bunch of things with the Nigerian elections and musicians. Do you want to talk about what exactly you're doing with that? Because I think it's really cool.
Yes. So elections are coming up in Nigeria. Nigeria is a very big strategic place, and democracy, of course, is a key piece of accountability. People need to to find their voices through their vote and push for the kind of government that they want. So we're trying to get young people in Nigeria to vote. And again, the way that we're looking at that is how do we tap into things that they're already interested in and then bring in this issue of accountability or participation. And music is very big in Nigeria, has a huge music industry. So our team there have come up with a campaign called Voice to Rep. So, find your voice to be represented.
Oh, interesting.
Where we opened up a competition nationally and said any first-time musician submit a demo to us through our social media accounts or on the website of you singing a song about participation or democracy, and we'll pick the top 10. And we partnered with the biggest music platform in Nigeria, which is called Chocolate City.
Very cool.
And have taken the top 10 this week, actually, to Lagos, the capital, to be mentored by big people in the music industry, some of the biggest stars who are helping them develop their songs. There's going to be a whole selection process, a bit like The Voice, where some of the big people in the industry take on some of these up and coming stars, and then professionally record their songs, develop the lyrics around these issues. And then we're going to do a series of concerts around Nigeria and invite young people everywhere to come and, of course, listen to the songs. Again, vote, have live voting for their favorites, and use this as a way to create the conversation and get people out to vote later on in the elections.
No, that's very cool, man. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on something, like just selfishly, even thinking back. I'm 35 now, just so you have some context. But thinking back to when I was in my late teens or early 20s, you think you have ideas on how to change things for the better. And how do you find, though, or at least for me, I've found that as I've kind of aged, you kind of decide whether you want to keep trying to change things for the better, or conform to what's ever happening in your geographic location for better or worse, or you try to be kind of a rebel inside the system. What are your thoughts on how you see that kind of play out from up and coming young people? Do you find that they try and then get jaded and just kind of try to conform, or is it somewhere in the middle? Do you think they keep at it, or what do you kind of see the generations coming up, kind of how are they kind of adopting as they get older and start working full time and actually maybe start working for some of these big organizations?
Yeah, I mean, I think young people today, as I mentioned, are more sort of engaged, more connected than they've ever been, I think,
Sure.
globally, and have the ability to see the way things are in other places in a way that, even you or I, when we were growing up, didn't have the ability to do. So there's a relative perspective there, and that is combined with continued and growing inequality and deep poverty and a lot that they are angry about, and there's no wonder that many of them don't feel like they really have a stake in the political and economic systems that exist. They're alienated from those systems. They don't see any way of making it up within those systems, and so there's not that much for them to lose if they try and overthrow them. Which is why we sometimes see violence. That's I think a large part of where terrorism comes from. We have to engage young people collectively and give them a stake in this system. So this isn't, what we're trying to do is not at all about revolution. It's about maintaining the current systems, but improving them and giving everyone staking them and making sure that their voices are heard. And I think that's what they want. And if you talk to them, that's what they'll say, and I don't hold it against anyone who says, listen, this is too difficult. I'm just going to take, a job in the system, and I know there's inequalities and problems, but I need to sort of look after myself. I think that's a perfectly natural way of thinking. But the people that we're targeting and really bringing in, and the ones that we work with the most closely, are the ones who are committed to changing things and saying, listen, I don't care what the personal cost is. I want to see things different, and I want to make them different, and I'm going to just push to do that, even if it's it costs me financially or physically in some cases. And those are the real change makers that I think can help us really evolve things in the right direction. So they're the ones that are inspiring and the ones that we're really trying to bring together and to network and to push forward.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. I also think too, and kind of why I asked the question is, it seems to me that there's a lot more people in all parts of the world like yourself that are trying to make a change, maybe in their local region or in other countries across the globe, right? And I think the crazy thing about the internet and some of the coolest stuff about the internet, in my opinion, is the ability to talk to and build a business or company with some sort of charitable or global impact from a completely different part of the world, right? Like, I think if you mentioned to me, you're in India right now, is that correct?
I'm in Pakistan.
Pakistan. Okay, sorry. But I'm in Canada right now, and we're recording this. And without the internet, you and I probably would have never met, never mind recording right now. And so the fact that we can do stuff globally without even being on the same continent now, and you and I could build a business based on being located in totally different parts of the world is really quite fascinating. And it seems to me that a lot of young people are really taking advantage of that, right? And maybe maybe they've never even been to the countries that they're trying to make a difference in, but through their business model, they're giving back to these communities. Have you found that?
Absolutely. I mean, I think technology has, played a massive role in connecting people and making the world smaller in many ways. And yeah, people can talk and collaborate now in ways that were, unfeasible even 5 or 10 years ago. And we have at the Accountability Lab, amazing local teams in all of the countries that we work who are, local student leaders and activists and people with great ideas. And it's one of the best things for me is to see the way that they collaborate across countries and are really making this into a global movement. Because in the end, that's, I think, what it needs to be. And they share ideas and learn from each other. And it's great. And I agree with you. I mean, it's I think something that now is only going to continue and can help improve lives dramatically.
Very cool. So I want to cover a couple of the other programs that you guys do. I know your applications for your accountability incubator are closed now, but I'm curious to know what exactly is that, and how have you guys kind of run the incubator for the last little while?
Yeah, so if you imagine a business incubator for entrepreneurs, for example,
Sure,
and then change that a bit and think about what that would look like for people who are trying to change the systems that we're talking about, governments and civic systems and ways of operating, then that's what we're trying to do with our incubator. So we have an application process. Anyone in the countries that we work can apply with a good idea, and the incubator provides them with training and mentorship and communication support and access to networks and funding to grow those ideas over time and build the communities around them to make them successful. So it's great. I mean, we have, it's not huge. We have maybe 5 or 10 people in each country every year, but they're some of the most creative people around. They've developed film schools around this stuff. They do interactive theater. They've created wiki tools online to crowdsource information on government services. They've been doing all sorts of different stuff, and so those ideas grow and become tools that these people can use to push for change.
Very cool. So, how do you guys make money and actually monetize Accountability Lab?
So we're a non-profit organization.
Okay. That's what I thought.
So we get grants from governments and foundations, and we get some donations from individuals. But but we're also earning income in a few different ways. And one is we've set up co-working and innovation spaces in many of the countries that we work.
Oh, interesting.
Again, specifically for kind of civic change makers who often don't always have a place to work or a decent internet connection or access to facilities that we can provide. So we provide those and charge a small amount that we subsidize to bring in a bit of revenue and to get these people going and connecting with each other. And now we're getting, as we grow, into sort of other ways of raising money. So, for example, the Integrity Idol campaign that I mentioned, we've now codified and we're licensing it to other organizations in different countries to run themselves, and then they pay us a license fee.
Got you.
So we're getting into some different, more sustainable revenue streams too, which is great.
Okay, interesting. So I'm curious then, where do you guys kind of take this over the next few years? Because there's a ton of countries globally that could use probably everything you guys do. But what other ideas do you guys have over the coming years? Because I think you could almost take this anywhere, right?
Yeah, and then there's lots of demand, sadly. We get emails, almost every week from someone in a different country saying, "Hey, can you come and build an accountability lab in my country, or can I help set one up?" Which is amazing. So the first thing we're doing, as I mentioned, is kind of codifying what we do and creating handbooks, and then trying to support other people around the world to do what we're doing and franchise things in that kind of way, which is one piece of it. So one thing we want to do is sort of go broader, go to more places. The other is go deeper in the places we're already working. And one big piece of that is working more with governments. Most of what we've done, as I have explained, is with sort of civil society activists and students and young people. But I think we've realized that we really need to work with people within government as well through our Integrity Idol campaign, but also more broadly to help them innovate within government systems in different ways. So that's a big piece of what we're beginning to look at and building out in different places too. And I think there's a lot of room for this over the next 5 or 10 years, finding new different partnerships between government and citizens, but also with media and with the private sector and others to kind of find how we can create maximum impact around all of this.
No, makes total sense. So you have another program called Citizen Helpdesk. What exactly is that, and how are you guys a part of that?
The Citizen Helpdesk started in Nepal, actually, nearly 4 years ago. You may remember there was a big earthquake in Nepal in 2015, and we are not a humanitarian organization, and we don't provide relief. But what we did have was networks of young people in all of the worst affected areas of Nepal, and so we said, well, let's mobilize them to collect information from people on what they need to inform the response. So that's what they did. They went out that same day and said to people, what's happened, what do you need? Gathered that information, fed it up to the government and to the international community, and then when decisions were made, fed the information about those decisions back down to communities. So it created this kind of feedback loop, which was really important, and actually is something that doesn't often happen in these kinds of situations, because everything is a crisis and it's a bit disorganized. So that became what we call the Citizen Helpdesks, which are not physical desks. It was groups of young people who would be in communities collecting information and feeding that back to inform and improve the way that aid was given. So that is continuing in Nepal. It's shifted now towards other issues like migration. So there's big issues of accountability around migration in Nepal. So they're gathering information on that and helping to inform communities about how the process works. And then also on public services like health and education. In Liberia, we've started citizen help desks around the management of natural resources. So, for example, there's some gold mining communities there, and often citizens in those areas don't always understand what the companies, the concession companies, have to provide. Why some of the problems aren't being fixed. So they're working again to create feedback loops around that. And then we've started it even in Mali, where there's a insurgency going on in the middle and the north of the country, in those places with young people to gather information on trust and justice issues and security issues, and using that to inform, for example, the UN peacekeeping mission and even the International Criminal Court, to help them get a sense of what's happening. And it works because it's really local. These young people are connected within their communities. They're trusted. They're from these places, so the security issues for them are to some extent internalized. They're able to move around in ways that others just can't. Okay. And we've set up a system that's simple and easy and can gather this information quickly, so we can really inform people in real time what's going on in places that they can't get to, and that's quite valuable in some of these remote or insecure parts of the world.
Sure. So you guys work in a handful of countries, but is there anything that majority of people listening to this show will be in America? Is there anything that Americans can do or people from other parts of the world that could do to actually get on board and support what Accountability Lab is doing? Because I think you guys have some really cool stuff, and there's probably a lot of people that listen to the show that have friends and family in the countries that you guys do so much of your work in.
Yeah, and we would, always love to hear from people. I think there's a few different things they can do. One is, we love feedback. If they have any ideas about what we do, any ways we can improve, we would love that. Like you said, if they have networks in the places that we work, or even other places where they think this might be necessary, we'd love to be in touch. I agree with you. Diaspora communities are really, really key, and we engage with them in lots of different ways in the places that we operate. So we'd love to be in touch with them too. They can, share our stuff on social media. A big piece of what we're up to, as I mentioned, is popularizing this and getting people talking about it. So they can visit our website, which is accountabilitylab.org, or at AccountLab on Twitter, or Accountability Lab on Facebook, and so on, and push this stuff out. And then again, as I mentioned, we are a non-profit organization, and if they feel the urge, they're more than welcome to visit our website and donate to the cause too, because I think, as I've explained, it's a really, really important one, and we'd love the support.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm curious, though. I know there's a bunch of startups that are doing a handful of things where they either maybe bring certain goods maybe into America and then use those to manufacture something, and then they sell it as a product, and then they give some of the profits back to the country where maybe the fabric or something that came from, and they actually try to help out local people in those countries, maybe become like a mini kind of business or maybe like a sole proprietor business. Have you guys ever thought about trying to team up with startups like that, or what are your thoughts on that? Because I think you guys are in these countries meeting these types of people, and there's probably a lot of companies in America or startups that could really partner with some of the people and companies you meet all the time. Or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of social enterprises who are doing the kind of thing that you're talking about, working with artisans, for example, or entrepreneurs in developing countries to help them gain access to markets like the US and other places. And that's really important. The job creation piece of things is really key in places where I mentioned, where young people often don't really feel like they have a stake or an opportunity. And this can give that to them. So it's really key. And we know lots of these people and talk to them and share ideas. I mean, the stuff that we're doing is very much related. It's more, as we've discussed, sort of on the political and civic activism side. But even through our incubator, for example, there are some awesome for-profit organizations that are looking at accountability, but from a for-profit perspective. So, for example, there's a young woman here in Pakistan who started a website that helps people rank and select doctors in Pakistan, and
very cool.
and that's important because there isn't a system where people can really see, which doctor is better than another, book appointments, all of that kind of stuff, the sort of thing that we might take for granted in the US or in Europe. So she set that up, and now we're sort of trying to help her connect to funders and investors in the US, and she's over in DC at the moment talking to a few people. So we definitely work with people that have great ideas like that too, and often there's an accountability component of what they do, which is fantastic.
No, very cool, man. But we're kind of coming to the end of the show, so do you want to close with mentioning where people can get more information about Accountability Lab and check out Integrity Idol and the upcoming music program that you guys are doing, Voice to Rep?
Absolutely. The website is www.accountabilitylab.org. Integrity Idol has its own separate website, which is www.integrityidol.org. And as does the Voice to Rep campaign in Nigeria, which is www.voice and then #2rep.ng. We're all over social media. Check us out, and be in touch with me too. My email is just blair@accountabilitylab.org. Would love to chat to anyone that's interested.
Perfect, man. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you, and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks so much, Kevin.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Please visit our website at buildingthefutureshow.com to join the free community, sign up for our newsletter, or to sponsor the show. The music is done by Electric Mantra. You can check him out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.